everyone, Jess here, and today I'm joined with Joel Klooster from Viasat. Thanks so much for joining me today, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So firstly, there's a lot of exciting innovation happening around aircraft, especially when we think about sustainability and the like. What changes need to happen to connectivity infrastructure to support these new aircraft being integrated safely?
So the communication infrastructure has undergone quite a few changes in the last few years. So the infrastructure is now there. Specifically, the changes that have been made over the last 5 or so years have been the introduction of cybersecurity. So as more critical infrastructure information is exchanged between the aircraft and air traffic control, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate encryption and cybersecurity protocols in place to protect that information. And then moving from AARS, which is a technology that was introduced back in the 1970s and is still used pretty widely in aviation, moving towards ATN, or the Aeronautical Telecommunications Network, which is a much more modern IP-based protocol for exchanging information. All of that's now in place. What we really need to do is adopt that technology. So it's being started to be used here in Europe with the AARS program across about 19 countries here in Europe, and really start to roll that out in other regions of the world as well and expand the use of that and get more and more aircraft equipped with that capability.
Okay, so the technology exists and it's out there, and it's just about accelerating the pace of adoption.
Exactly, yeah.
So then to follow on for that, how can higher capacity communications drive operational efficiency in air traffic management, which is something that we have been seeing a lot of problems around, specifically at sort of Europe in the summertime. That can be a bit of a difficult time.
Well, it's going to become even more critical as the number of aircraft and passengers increase pretty significantly over the next 10 to 20 years. I think they're projecting a doubling in the number of aircraft and even more passenger demand over the next 20 years. So we need to do something to maintain the current levels of safety while improving operational efficiency and sustainability in the face of that extra demand. And really that requires moving from voice communications to data link. So being able to provide much more efficient communication protocols between air traffic control and the pilots. And you can't do that by voice. There's limitations on how much information you can convey when you're using voice. And so that requires downlinking what the aircraft's preferred trajectory is, what its intent would be, so that the air traffic controller has more information, more situational awareness, and then the ability to uplink more complex clearances, the exact route that the aircraft needs to fly, and not just the route, but altitudes and time that it needs to arrive at certain places so that air traffic control can manage the flow of aircraft more efficiently. All of that's enabled by data link, moving from voice to more complex data link clearances, and then also improving the connection from the pilot back to the dispatcher, the airline operations center. So providing more weather updates. These are kind of high volume information that you need higher bandwidth solutions to be able to send all of that information from the dispatcher to the aircraft.
Fantastic. And then at the start of the conversation, we sort of touched on connectivity infrastructure and the existing technology, but what about these emerging technologies and AI? How do you think that this is going to have the greatest difference in the connectivity landscape?
Well, AI requires a lot of information, right? It requires the data to be trained on. And that requires moving, again, from voice to data link. It requires more information to be shared. And it requires kind of that infrastructure from what's done on the edge, the aircraft itself, to what's done on the cloud. There's only so much processing power available on the aircraft itself. So a lot of these really complex AI algorithms need to be run in the cloud. And that requires constant, frequent, real-time information exchange via data link from the aircraft to the cloud where these algorithms are being run. So you think about things like predictive maintenance as the engines that are powering these new aircraft become more and more complex as more sensors are available on these high-tech aircraft. Well, predictive maintenance becomes more and more capable and also more and more important to make sure that the aircraft are maintained and available to fly. And that requires real-time information sharing, and then flight optimization, algorithms to do flight path optimization, route optimization, when the weather is changing, you have turbulence and things like that. All of these algorithms require data to be exchanged from the aircraft to the ground and then back to provide that operational efficiency and reliability.
Absolutely. And then, of course, in an industry where safety is of paramount importance, I mean, I imagine some of it circles back to cybersecurity, which you were talking about earlier, but how do we ensure the integration of these innovative tech and solutions enhances safety rather than impacts it?
Well, first of all, it is the most safe mode of transportation today, right? And I think that's why it's such a big deal when you do have an event and why it gets so much publicity. So we just need to maintain and improve the levels of safety, and that requires situational awareness, improvement in information sharing between the pilot and the air traffic controller, that they have the exact same information, and that can be exchanged in a timely manner. So ensuring that when you're making these changes to the flight path, when you're making sure that you're separating aircraft and finding them on the most efficient route, that information can be sent via data, and without the pilot having to translate anything in his or her head, that it can just be loaded directly into the flight management computer that's connected to the autopilot and flying that aircraft. So it's just seamless flow of information from all the different pieces of technology on the ground and on the aircraft and the pilot and air traffic controller, and just ensuring that it's maintained safe. We've got new cybersecurity standards and VPNs and encryption that are ensuring segregation from anything that's done in the cabin with the passengers to the cockpit, that from the aircraft to the ground, it's now securely protected, and just making sure that we're maintaining the levels of safety while the amount of traffic and amount of aircraft in the airspace increases.
Absolutely, and that's so important. And then if we think about the event today, why did you decide to join us at Aerospace Tech Week? How does it help to drive innovation?
Well, I think it's just a great forum for all of these companies that are working in the same space to come together, to meet customers, to meet partners, to see what others are doing, and to kind of share the state of the technology and what we've been doing, and raise that awareness from our side as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me today, Joel.
Yeah, thanks for having us.